any good military plan is going to have multiple axes of approach. What we see Russia doing here is taking advantage of their presence that already existed in the Ukraine, or in the eastern part of the Ukraine, over here to the east, where they've got separatists. Actually, Russia had moved into there earlier yesterday, so makes good sense for them. There are a lot of Russian nationals over in the eastern part of Ukraine, so there's going to be sympathizers with the Russians as they come in. To the south, port city of Odessa, which is a key access to the Black Sea, and again coming from Crimea, which was annexed back in 2014. So certainly drawing attention to the south and the east, and then of course the key part here is up in the central part of the country, in Kiev, where the government is. And so, one of the objectives here, if you want to invade another country and impose your will on that country, you got to decapitate the existing government. And so we saw that with airstrikes going after the command and control nodes to really just isolate the president and his ability to run the country, to fight back. And so, the question now is what's next, and how do we as a world body try to prevent the fall of the country and the removal of their democratically elected leader.
In your opinion, how easy would it be for Russia to kind of just roll through? I saw a video of tanks just unimpeded crossing the border yesterday. How fast could they get from their military strongholds into key parts of Ukraine?
Yeah, I mean, no question from a strictly military assault perspective, Russia has an overwhelming advantage here. And so for the Ukraine, it's going to be preserve what they can, concentrate in those areas and those cities that matter, and then prepare for what's next. Whether that's a counterinsurgency to try and take the country back, and allow the rest of the world to try and help Ukraine come to an acceptable resolution to this invasion.
Feel free to point on the map for this one, but if you were in charge of the military operations for the United States and the president came to the decision that he did want to put U.S. troops into Ukraine, what would be the easiest or most pertinent ways of sending in? Would we drop in like we've seen in World War II with paratroopers, or would it be mostly land?
No, I would see if we were to decide to up our response, I don't frankly see us putting troops on the ground. We have a lot of other kinetic and non-kinetic activities that we could undertake. Now that Russia is in, the advantage of putting troops in the Ukraine would be back to your conversation on deterrence. That any conflict that were to occur, would there be a likelihood of engaging U.S. troops? It's too late for that. Russia is in the Ukraine, and so now the question is, how do we help the Ukrainians hold what they've got? So airstrikes could certainly be a possibility. Cyber attacks could be a possibility. Special operations. This is a dire circumstance, but we, the United States, we NATO, we the world, still have a lot of options here. But it's not going to end well. There's, in my opinion, there's really three things here. We as an alliance and as a world decide to go in forcibly and kick Russia back out of the Ukraine. We go after the sanctions, which we're clearly doing now. I believe we've got to do them wholeheartedly. We can't just do a slow boil. We have got to make it very clear and make it very painful for Russia and its leadership that they need to back off. The other option is to capitulate and go back to Putin's demands before he invaded and see if we're willing to go to those. But a road to conflict has off-ramps, and the goal is to try and find an off-ramp before violence that's acceptable to both sides. And we've passed some of those off-ramps, and so now the question is, what's that future off-ramp? And I know you'll edit these together. Mm-hmm. You asked about deterrence. Mm-hmm. Frequently as we proceed in a negotiation or a prevention of conflict, we talk about escalation. sort of this back and forth. The opponents do something, and then we do something, and it's typically referred to as a ladder, sort of one step up, one step down. What we're faced with in today's conflict, not just here but across the world, is really a matrix of escalation. There are so many things that both sides can do to move across this matrix that really confound things, and what comes to mind is cyber. You know, how does that play in here? Does a cyber attack in the Baltic states certainly cause us pause? And it's not just this vertical escalation up and down. It's complicated now by a multi-dimension approach to this, which makes deterrence very difficult and makes this whole circumstance a very dangerous one.